For the last few corporate defenders of the Acolyte, things are getting rather hot, spicy you might say, as their ability to connect with fans and audiences is greatly diminished. You see, folks, part of the business of this business is you have to be at least somewhat connected with reality. And the longer the Acolyte drops 80, 85, 90, 95% of the typical Star Wars audience, the hotter and angrier these folks are getting. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Pro Channel, explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of the culture curve. It is the job we have been given, and we are here to give you a PhD in understanding what is going on with the latest franchise to fall to DEI and wokeness and all of the blokeness that is the Disney Board of Approval. Whoever is stamping these things, seriously, if it's Filoni, if it's Kathleen, if it goes higher, what are you enjoying in your free time? Because it must distort reality in a way that not even a mushroom could ever aspire to. Folks, today we're talking about the Acolyte. It is almost over, and you are not going to hear a peep, not a peep about this show once it's over from the access and mainstream media. They will have done the best job they could for Disney, and then they are getting out of Dodge. And they are fleeing on the horse they came in on, and they will not be back. I guarantee you that. This has been a disaster for them. They have sold so much of their influence, so much of their cachet on this company, and Disney owes them quite a few cupcakes. Today we're going to show you, folks, the number one target of that maybe. The new Scott Mendelson is in town. All right, folks, let's talk about what's going on, though, in the way that the coverage is happening. This is out of Forbes, and this is by Paul Tassi, and we're going to take Paul Tassi to task. He's not going to like it, but that's what happens when IQ of a high level is landed on this lampooning of the fan base and of the YouTubers out there. This is the Forbes article. Again, Paul Tassi, the author. He's the new Scott Mendelson. Professional Acolyte haters fall for fake Rotten Tomatoes controversy. Paul is going to take a victory lap around these poor buffoons. Let's see how he does. Paul says, and by the way, folks, as we get into this, remember that Paul is writing over at Forbes. He's already made angry some of his colleagues over there. And Paul is writing about a failed show. We're covering a failed show, but we know what we're doing. We know what we're up to. Paul doesn't realize it's failed yet. It's not even going to make the Nielsen charts in the last couple of episodes. And so we're literally covering something that the only merit it has in coverage is how far down this franchise has fallen. But that Paul doesn't realize that. That's the joke that we all get. It says it's very depressing to see an entire industry created to hate on various pieces of a supposedly woke media. In other words, Paul is frustrated that people have opposing points of view and that those points of view which he opposes have viewership. He doesn't like that. But we have not seen anything like the manufactured outrage devoted to the Acolyte, except Paul with The Last Jedi, which I'm sure you would also say is manufactured. Disney Plus's new Star Wars series set long before the most well-known era. Now, those making their online existence about hating the Acolyte have leapt on an absolutely non-existent controversy, spread by a number of high-profile Twitter accounts, including the 2.6 million follower having End Wokeness. There was an idea passed around that Rotten Tomatoes had hidden or erased the 25,000 user scores that had bombed the Acolyte, every single one of them, folks. All 25,000, they're bombers, they're not real, they're not actual reviews. That's Paul Tassi. No evidence necessary. Don't look behind the curtain, darn it. But that was down to a 14% rating, lower than any Star Wars project in history, including the infamous holiday special. This, of course, did not happen, says Paul Tassi. Shortly after this made the rounds, the score was back. Which, by the way, if it was gone and then it came back, then it means it happened. Paul, make it make sense, man. If it didn't happen, then how did it come back? I digress, just like Paul. The worst thing that happened here was a brief technical glitch. Now, Paul has no evidence of that. Of course, he didn't reach out to Rotten Tomatoes. At least he doesn't say so in the article. The kind of which frequently happens on Rotten Tomatoes, especially with these score listings. Oh, it happens all the time, folks. No evidence needed. Don't look behind the curtain. Darn you. But those eager to find any possible fault with the show or defense of it leapt on the screenshots. I counted, Paul did, at least a dozen YouTube videos made about the score deletion in the hours after these posts started to be spread. In other words, Paul discovered that when the scores disappeared, people began to comment on the scores disappearing. But it's not actually true because the scores came back, and that somehow negates the fact the scores disappeared. Good job, Paul.
But
Many of these.
That's 12. If I'm not mistaken, correct? He found 12 thumbnails with manufactured 25,000 reviews of outrage.
In a million YouTube videos that were put out. I don't know the exact number, folks, in a day. Paul found 12. Good job, Wilton. Well played.
Thank you.
Now, let me say, okay, so he's got Josiah Rising. And by the way, he doesn't actually credit these people in their thumbnails, which I think is journalistic malpractice.
Oh, he's a jerk, man. He never puts my thumbnails on there. What a jerk.
Yeah, and then he says, I've seen people then say, well, how do you know they didn't just delete it and put it back up? Then he says, well, because they would not delete something for like an hour, blah, 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 blah. He doesn't have he's just speculating here. He hasn't done any real journalism. He's not reached out to Rotten Tomatoes to ask anything about it. Now, down here, this is the one that I find fascinating because he comes out and he says that these are driving hundreds of thousands of views. And the only reason he's right is because this thumbnail, I knew this style immediately when I saw it. This is Mike Zero. This is a Mike Zero thumbnail. Now, folks, I'm not here to disparage Mike Zero. I'm not going to do that. But I understand that Mike Zero is doing a different style of content than what many of the YouTubers that cover these things that they're doing. Mike Zero is covering a tabloid-esque kind of way, right?
Fanfic.
You don't watch Mike Zero and immediately go, that's what's going on. It's a different genre.
You are so kind.
But Tassi,
that is an incredibly nice way of putting that, bro.
Thank you. I'm doing my best. So Tassi wants to conflate. This is the attempt. Tassi wants to conflate everyone who dislikes the Acolyte with Mike Zero style coverage. That's the effort of this article. And I just want to say again to Paul, because he doesn't understand this apparently, you are defending a dead show. You are laying yourself on the line over at Forbes. You are Scotty Mendelsoning yourself over a show that will not appear on the Nielsen charts after about episode 5 because of how little interest there is. Do not lay yourself upon the tracks, Paul, for this one. You should not do that. Anyway.
Now, here's the question for him. Because if this is one of those things where guys like all of you are manufacturing content based on what they're doing, if the show is good, I posit that you would also be manufacturing content. But I question, would he be caring?
It's almost as if we cover the good and the bad, and Disney just puts out a lot of bad lately. I see Lauren. I see a thought percolating out. What do you got, Lauren?
I was just going to say, posit's an awfully fancy word for a troll.
You
Wilton,
really
explain
don't know
yourself.
Well, you guys obviously don't know what I'm
He did finish 3rd grade. I heard that. I saw the little drawing with the 5 stars that his teacher gave him. Now, past 3rd grade, different story.
I like
culture, you look different over there. What are you up to?
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you for your kind support. Now, we all know that over at Disney Star Wars right now, they have some real problems. And, you know, I appreciate that you guys follow the channel for your latest Disney Star Wars content. But in the latest USB that I found in the parking lot in a In-N-Out Burger located in Santa Barbara, California, I can tell you right now that we know for sure that Disney is struggling behind the scenes with Star Wars. It's mainly Kathleen Kennedy's fault, and we don't have any other reason to blame anybody else, including Paul Tassi, who says ridiculous stuff over at Forbes just to try to cover other people's asses. Thank you.
I have never heard Mike say that word.
Well, I don't think that Mike is going to get along with Paul very soon. John, you're in the news business. I think I've heard that before. What are your thoughts on the defense of this Rotten Tomatoes story as if it's not a story, but simultaneously somehow confirming it was a story in the article? I mean, what are the mental gymnastics happening here?
Guy's a clown. He's literally just doing that to try and generate clicks. He's trying to be anti-woke to generate clicks, and that's all it is. He has his opponents. He's marked them, and he's going to try and do everything he can to attack them. Unfortunately for him, he's dishonest. He's now exposed himself as a liar. And people that do that, bad things usually happen to them. And
wait a minute, John. That's a major claim, and you're talking about Paul Tassi, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So you say that he is a professional fibber, John, why do you say that claim? What's the evidence for it?
I think he's right there. That article. He's saying that it's fake, and it clearly isn't.
It clearly happened.
The audience
people covered it.
Weird. Yes.
Well, to be fair, if I'm going to play my conjecture card, now the idea here would be that we're also assuming, correct, that Rotten Tomatoes hid that number at Disney's request. Not that we're not saying it's unprecedented, because it's not like this hasn't happened before, but I don't know where to go from there.
That was as far as the third grade education could take him.
Yep.
I didn't actually go to the site when this was happening, but I did see you guys talking about it. And my understanding was that you could still see the score if you went to a section that was labeled Season 1, right?
Correct.
So if that's the case, then it wasn't a technical glitch, because the data was still there and accessible. You just had to go somewhere else to find it.
And it was happening on a number of Star Wars shows.
It moved from the place that it has always been to a different place. So,
Well, that happens. Like Rivers.
It could have been as easily as they take it down, people respond to it, and then it's like, oh, well, let's put that back up. And you could have seen it that way as well, but obviously Paul Tassi
for all we know, it's Dave the intern, right? It's who we don't know what happened, but it happened, and people covered it, and then there was a change, and they went back to the normal. Okay, but the idea that it didn't happen, as Paul Tassi is saying, it's some kind of, that's some sort of lampooning of reality when you come out and you say, well, it happened, but then it was unhappened, and therefore it did not happen at all, and therefore these people who I don't agree with are now not allowed to cover the news. Now, and then to bring in the Mike Zero thing, Paul Tassi's not a complete moron. He may be twisting the truth here, but he's at least knowledgeable enough to understand that the major YouTube channels and Mike Zero are not one and the same. And I think it's a purposeful conflation there. And folks, we've come to the end yet again of another video of pure excellence. Want to say, by the way, folks, we have no personal animus towards Paul Tassi. We wish him the very best. We just don't get the feeling he wishes us the best. And that might be the reason for some of these videos and these kinds of topics is, ladies and gentlemen, come on. Defend your positions, have fun, be kind to others, all of that, You don't have to go into war over fictional stories, which are obviously so bad. So bad. Anyway, Paul, you want to come on sometime? Hop on over. The water's fine. Folks, you know what else is fine? That like button. Share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment right on down below. Let us know your thoughts and wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep, I guess this is important, having fun!